is now Monday, September 10th, and we are now at the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season. Literally, September 10th is the peak of the hurricane season, and we are absolutely seeing that right now. There's 3 hurricanes in the Atlantic, and 2 of them are going to affect land. And not to mention a hurricane affecting good old Hawaii on the other side in the Pacific. In case you don't know, I absolutely love the weather, and I actually had a separate YouTube channel just for that called MWG Weather, but me trying to manage 3 different channels, or 4 if you count MWG Gaming, was way too much for me. So now I've just completely downgraded it to 1 MWG Tech and 2 this vlogs channel. But since I do love hurricanes, I love tracking them, I love seeing them on the satellite radar, I love getting the feeling of the rain and the wind straight on your face. I absolutely love hurricanes, and whenever a hurricane is going to affect land, I'm going to make an update video just like this one, because there's 2 affecting land and 1 might have a possibility of hitting Florida. But right now, Hurricane Florence is taking its eye to the Carolinas. I'll round up all the hurricane information because right now there's around like 7 to 8 to 9 tropical systems all across the world, all the way in the Western Pacific affecting Hawaii and of course the Atlantic. Hurricane Florence is the one that people in the Carolinas and around the coast of Georgia should be preparing for. They should be getting their hurricane supplies as soon as possible because Hurricane Florence is keeping its eye on them. Hurricane Florence right now is just a Category 2 hurricane, 105 miles per hour, but when I upload this video, it's probably going to be a Cat 3, maybe even a Cat 4. But Florence is right now rapidly strengthening, which means it's strengthening very, very fast because all the environment is now conducive for development. Over the past 3 days, Florence is just been chilling on a strong tropical storm weak hurricane because the environment wasn't that conducive. But now the wind shear has diminished and Florence is only heading for warmer waters. And Florence was already a Cat 4 hurricane. It already did that, but then it encountered some wind shear, then weakened, and now it's going to strengthen again to maybe Cat 4, Cat 5 status. And when we're talking about Cat 4, Cat 5, even Cat 3, it is nothing to mess around with. Just last year, Hurricane Harvey was a Category 4 making landfall along the Texas coastline. We had Hurricane Maria completely devastate Puerto Rico and the Caribbean islands as a Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricane. These hurricanes are serious. They are no joke, especially when we're talking about the storm surge that could come upon the Carolinas. Right now in satellite imagery, Florence is just flourishing. You could just see the outflow from the hurricane. It has this beautiful look to it. It has a kind of small eye right now, just around 10 miles wide. But the crazy part is it's still got a lot more strengthening to go. Over the past 7 days, the models have gotten more and more consensus on where Florence is going to make landfall. Because around 5 days from now, it didn't look like Florence was going to make landfall at all. It was kind of like a hint, like could the model shift this far? And yet we're dealing with that now. Right now, the National Hurricane Center has Florence as a 145 mile per hour Category 2 hurricane making landfall on the North Carolina coast Friday morning. Right now, the GFS model has Hurricane Florence making landfall along the Outer Banks as a just pretty strong hurricane, and the European model has Florence a little bit more south to more of the Wilmington area along the northern coastline. But truly, anywhere from the North Carolina, Virginia coastline border all the way to around the South Carolina, Georgia coastline border, Hurricane Florence can make a landfall anywhere between there, but it's most likely around in between Wilmington and Myrtle Beach. But anywhere from there, you gotta start preparing right now. Especially if you live on the coast in between Charleston, South Carolina and Morehead City, know your evacuation plan right now. Maybe start putting your hurricane shutters up, get your food, get your water, get all your supplies, get your batteries for ready. Start getting everything ready because a major hurricane is heading to your hometown right now. And it is no joke. We are right now around 5 to 4 days away, so the exact location is going to vary, so you got to start watching the forecast too. But don't let Florence come up behind you. Although there's some wind shear forecasted, when it makes landfall, it's still going to be a ferocious hurricane making landfall, and you cannot have a joke. Even if you live on the Outer Banks and this thing is still a Cat 1, Cat 2, major storm surge is going to be there. All the models are now anticipating a strong ridge of high pressure to force Florence to make landfall all along the South Carolina and North Carolina coastline. And if Hurricane Florence is a Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricane, it is going to be rare territory, landing, falling all the way up there. And this right here, what I'm about to say, is definitely going to be a situation that we're going to have to see develop over the next couple of days. But there is a stationary front that might be colliding with Florence, leading Florence to almost move stationary once it landfalls inland. Could this be another Hurricane Harvey type scenario where a hurricane just stays in place and dump rain? Florence could just do that, and some models are even anticipating Florence to go back out into the ocean and re-strengthen to a tropical storm after it makes landfall. If that was enough hurricanes for you, there is still way more out there, and now our attention is to Hurricane Isaac, which is just a 75-mile-per-hour category run hurricane right now. It does not look that great on satellite imagery because it's battling some dry air, but if you live along the Lesser Antilles, you have to keep a watch on the system, and Puerto Rico and Hispaniola and even South Florida, we could just keep our eye on it. Any potential U.S. threats is around 10 days away, and a lot can change in 10 days with the models. I mean, a lot. But right now, over the next 5 days, Hurricane Isaac is just gonna head west and west and west until it hits the Lesser Antilles around Thursday night. Once it reaches the Lesser Antilles, it might very well be a Cat 2 hurricane at most, but still the GFS and the European model are still focusing on a just tropical storm system, a weak tropical storm landfalling in the Lesser Antilles.
That's because once Isaac reaches the Caribbean Sea right now, the wind shear is forecasted to be unconducive for further development, but if the wind shear lessens and the model trend turns to less and less wind shear,
Florida, Cuba, Hispaniola, you gotta keep your eye on this one. Right now, the European model has Hurricane Isaac just tracking west and west until it reaches Jamaica, and that's when Florence has moved inland, and that's gonna allow a high pressure to move in and pick up Isaac to possibly make its move north to South Florida. We are definitely gonna have to watch this over the next 2 weeks. Is gonna be a long time. But if the environment is conducive for development and Isaac just slowly starts to turn a little bit more north, a lot more land is going to be in jeopardy. But at the moment, the Lesser Antilles are going to have to keep their eye on this because both Florence and Isaac are gonna making their landfall impacts around Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's all happening at once, and that's what we expect for this Atlantic hurricane season. And these tropical systems do not end because there is a hurricane. Right now it's a Hurricane Olivia affecting Hawaii. In the next couple of days, there's tropical storm warnings out for all the major islands. And if Hawaii was surrounded by that 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures for the nice warm water, Olivia would be a hurricane making landfall, but it's not. So Olivia is going to weaken to a tropical storm, so not much to worry about with Hawaii. And on the top of all that, there's a tropical disturbance just in disorganized area of thunderstorms right now in the Eastern Caribbean Sea. No, not the Eastern, the Western Caribbean Sea, making its way to the Gulf of Mexico and eventually kind of make its landfall in Texas. Right now, the GFS model does not develop this system at all, but the European model is just making this a weak tropical storm, so we're definitely going to watch this in case it rapidly develops, and it could just very well be a tropical storm or hurricane on the Texas coastline. We still got a few days to watch all these systems, but if you are in the cone of Hurricane Florence, make sure you start preparing. If you're in the cone of Hurricane Isaac, make sure you start preparing. You do not want this to just come up right behind you. You don't. And there's just one more smidgy little system out in the Atlantic, but it's not going to affect any land. It's just going to be a nice storm for the fish, and that is Hurricane Helen, which is right now a 85-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane. It did affect the Cape Verde Islands. Did I say that right? It did affect those little islands just to the west of the African coastline, but is now going to affect no more land in its path, and it's just going to enjoy being a nice hurricane, and we could appreciate this on satellite imagery. But if you did not remember, just a week ago to this day, South Florida was affected by a tropical storm, and which actually made landfall to the Alabama, Florida coastline as a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm, but just here in South Florida, it was 45 miles per hour. Here's my little self being so excited for just a tropical storm. I mean, I love hurricanes. I kind of wish our hurricane were to make landfall in South Florida, but I'm not hoping for like a Cat 4, Cat 5. I'm just hoping for a weak one. Of course, we do get to miss school, and I love that, but I just love experiencing hurricanes. So here's my situation of Tropical Storm Gordon. Yes, it's now officially Tropical Storm Gordon. Let's go! As of the 8 o'clock advisory this morning, Gordon is now officially a tropical storm, 45 miles per hour, but the 11 o'clock updates coming in like 30 minutes. The funny thing about this tropical storm is that it's happening on Labor Day, on a Monday. So if this was happening tomorrow, or if Monday wasn't Labor Day, we would have no school. But guess what? We still got Labor Day off, but why couldn't this system just come tomorrow? And just 24 hours ago, it was labeled in Invest, allowing the models to predict what's going to happen to the system further. And then later that night, it got classified as a potential cyclone. It was labeled a potential cyclone because everyone knew this thing was going to form. It has almost no little wind shear affecting the system's growth, and the water temperatures in the ocean, in the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, are just boiling. Right now, all we're experiencing is some steady, heavy rain and occasional wind gusts, but this system actually made landfall in Key Largo / Homestead, and right now it's around Marco Island, but throughout the day, it's just gonna slowly trail us off into the Gulf of Mexico, where it could become a hurricane and make a landfall in Louisiana. And just in the past 12 hours, this formed from like a weak tropical wave, just a little rain, to some actual organization and classified as a tropical storm. When I woke up this morning, checked my phone, it was like, oh, it's still a potential cyclone, and I was kind of disappointed. Then as of 8 o'clock this morning, the tropical wave got classified as Gordon, no longer Invest 91L. Now I'm excited because I love tropical storm, and it just looks so weird checking like the National Hurricane Center website and seeing like a hurricane or a tropical storm right over South Florida. This is no Hurricane Irma, but I love tracking tropical systems. I love it so much. I just absolutely love how this thing just 3 days ago only had like a 10% chance to form, and now it's officially a tropical storm. Just the progress of like tropical systems, it's like, it's so lovely to watch. And now right here, it's actually a tropical storm.
Can try this love thing forever. I hope we can try this love thing forever. Love thing forever,
As of 1 o'clock, Miami is now done with all of the heavy rain. It's now just going to be steady light rain, and then it's going to diminish into nothing. The pool is still getting all filled up nicely. But what's happening with Tropical Storm Gordon right now, still a 45-mile-per-hour system, is insane. It's already forming an eye wall and clearing out the eye. Although it's only been over the Gulf of Mexico waters for an hour, I feel like Louisiana is going to get more than a strong tropical storm. Probably Cat 1, Cat 2, even Cat 3 hurricane. But I'll check with you later.